so today I'll just discuss two topics, and the first is how to create games in Smojo. There's actually quite an extensive tutorial and method to create these 2D simple games that you can play with. And secondly, I will also describe the Smojo chat CSV system that I talked about last week. So last week I give you the detailed codes of how to create something like that. And I also mentioned that we want to actually make a query engine as well. All of that is done, and I'll show you how to use it today. It's very simple, much simpler than last week. Okay, so you've got any kind of CSV data that you want to import into your chatbots, you can, and it's quite easy to do this. Right. So first of all, let's talk about making games in Smojo. So Smojo is actually a programming language. You can use Smojo is basically good at writing code. So actually, we use Smojo oftentimes to convert Smojo code into very complicated code. So like, for example, the chatbots is actually written in JavaScript, HTML, CSS, okay, on the front end. And of course, there's Smojo on the back end. All of that is hidden from you. You don't really have to write much or any HTML, to be honest, for your chatbots. But it's hidden from you, and actually Smojo is used to auto-generate those codes automatically. In the same way, you can also use Smojo to actually make games as well. And we also have, so Smojo is used as a way to write these JavaScript and HTML web app-based games. Very simple games for now, but we are thinking of expanding this into something that's more complicated, more interesting. And perhaps later on in the near future, these games can also be included into your chatbots as well. For now, the games are all standalone. They support things like custom images. You can create your own sound. You can even create your own music as well. Okay, so it's very rich, the environment for the games. Okay, so I will just give you a very quick demo of this, and you can play around with this yourself. There are two tutorials. It's split in two parts. The first part is GU101, and the second one is GU101B, which is part 2. And there's also a template called the Maze game. It's a template which you can download and you can play around with as well. Okay, if you want to play around with this, I suggest you start from the top and then work your way down. Okay, it's not very hard. We teach this actually to 10-year-olds, 12-year-old kids, right? So it's not so hard to pick up, right? Okay, before I go and further, I also wanted today describe the the CSV system that we built or partly built last week, but I'll do that later on. Let me just show you the games first. All right, so if you go to the labs, and this time you go to building 2D games part 1, just download that, and we'll be lazy and also download the part 2 as well. Okay, and I'll do the part 3 as well, the maze game. So all 3. Okay, just close up the labs. Click here. Okay, so I've got everything here, right? So I'll go to GU101 first, and here you can see there is actually a lab instructions clearly put out for everything that you need to do. Okay, and there are 4 labs, right? What's all about games, how do you make layouts. You can create your own bitmaps, for example, and of course sounds and even music as well. You can actually create your own music if you want to, right, through audio but also writing music as well. Yeah, so you can actually write and play your own music in your games. So let's just see this in action. Hang on a bit, I'm having a problem with the. All right. So as usual, you go to main.m. Okay. Now instead of chatbot, for example, or topics, the main files, like the topics like you have in chatbots, but this is called game. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are just lab notes. Okay, the labs are, you need to work through those labs to understand how these things work. But the game files are all under game. All right. So bitmaps, for example, is all about drawing certain things. this is, yeah, you can see all the drawings with for bitmaps. There's music as well, where you can play, you can write your own music if you know how to write music. You can create palettes like colors and so on, and you can create your own animated characters. Like in this case, there are just two here. So this is a very simple game. The first game, of course, is very simple, very trivial, but it shows you the main aspects of how to do it. So forget about the bitmap editor. You click on this, it basically just gives you a very simple bitmap that you can select, and you can draw bitmaps like that, right? Let's say I draw a little face here. Okay. Right. I can just click a color and a little smile. Make a little robot for myself. Okay. And then you can just show the bitmap and just copy this. Right. This is actually a bit of Smojo, and you can copy this and then save it as a bitmap. Okay. Or you can edit bitmaps that are already there. For example, the paddle bitmap. Right. This is a paddle bitmap. You can select the palette that you want, the paddle palette, for example. So in this case, you can see if I do a re-import, oops, let's see now, of the paddle. So this is the paddle itself. And I can create the ball palette, which is a different one, and the ball bitmap. Okay. And of course, there's also a sound editor as well, where you can actually create new sounds. So this is more complicated. I suggest that you check out the tutorial on how to do this. So this is basically tells you like a sound wave. You can create a sound wave. And what you're doing is actually doing something called Fourier Harmonics. Okay, so you click on this. Each pattern that you create creates a new sound. And you can play a music, for example. Let's see if I play this music, which I wrote. Okay, just a treble part. Okay, and you can change the speed at which you play that at as well. If I play it slower, which is a terrible sounding thing because this is not very good. Okay, and once you're happy with your sound, you can always show the sound itself. Get this part here, copy it, and save it. And of course, there are a lot of instructions there on how to create new sounds, how to use them, and so on. Okay. Now, but the main thing, of course, is the publish, which is just publish. Okay. So like in the chatbots, it's the same thing. See? Okay. You've got the username / your game name in this case. It's a game. Okay. And you can see the imports are a bit different as well. All right. There are four kinds of imports. You can see also first the what's it called? The cloud words are a bit different. You've got Terra /apps and Serra /game instead of chat. And you've got 4 sections to every game: a view, some optional resources like sounds, bitmaps, music, right? So in this case, there's sounds, a palette, bitmaps, and some music. And you've got the various game. Could you switch off your mic, please? And last of all, you've got the logic setup to set up the game itself and some logic. Okay, so let's just publish this, and just as how you would have for chatbots, you also have got the name of the game that you want to have with the publish word, and of course you can share this with some other stuff. You can see the amount of options you have on publish is a lot less compared to chatbots, because for games, most of the setup and so on is very detailed. You can do a lot with it. Okay, in these files, the setup and logic files and other files, the style and view files as well. Okay, so you don't have to rely on predefined settings anymore. So let's just publish this game. Very simple game. All it is a, let me just show you how it works. So I click to start. Okay, so the music turns on. Okay, and whoa. Okay, I've got 1 second left. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to switch this off. But you get the idea, right? That's a very, very simple game. And they are, it's not so hard to create games like that. I made it simple simply just because it's easy to teach. And you can try that yourself. Let's move on to the next one, which is GU11B. So in B, I gave you, we teach you how to do the other parts of the game, like game design, how to make components, and how to write the logic. And there's also answers to all the questions as well that you can check, right? And similarly, it's got a main.m2. This is a different game, and this one was actually designed by my son, and he's 10 years old. Okay, let's try his game. I'm not sure if the game would work because this was, so the game is called Gravity, and right, so let's click to start. Okay, so the aim of the game is to avoid being hit by the green ball, right? You can see the green ball is kind of rotate. So I've forgotten how this game is played. I think at the very start, there's, oops. Okay, at the very start, there's no, so the orange ball is only allowed to move left to right, right? Oops. Okay. All right. And of course, there are bugs and so on, which you need to clean up. But that's done later on as an exercise in the tutorials. And if you want to have some fun, I would suggest you can try this. Okay. And last of all, once you've done GU101B and the first part, oops, then you can try the maze game, which is GU102. Oh, yeah. Hang on. I think this didn't download. I'm sorry. Okay, if I think it's because I changed the name of the file, but we'll fix this. But this GU102 you can actually download and actually just run the game, and it's actually a more complicated maze game, right? So it's like almost like a Pac-Man kind of game with ghosts and balls, and it's much more complicated. And you can have a look at it and actually play that game and edit that game if you want to. Okay, so just a quick intro into very simple 2D games for the time being, but we are working on making more interesting games, and which you can integrate with your chatbots down the line. For the next part, which is using the CSV system that I described last week. So there are only two words in this when you do this Smojo chat CSV. The first word is called CSV, which takes the file path. So you need a CSV file, and it returns a database that you can use. And then you can start to run queries against this database, right, with a query word. So just two words, CSV and query, okay? So let me just show you how this works, because it's fairly simple and straightforward, and quite useful if you have got CSV or you have to work with CSV data, okay? So first of all, let's look at the doc. So Smojo/doc, and you say doc Smojo chat CSV. All right, so let's just look at this and see the details of this for the docs. All right, so you've got the two words, well, two main words, CSV and query. Okay, and basically for CSV, it takes a path and produces a database. And the CSV needs to have a certain specific format. That the first row must be a header to tell you what all the columns mean. Okay, so let's just try this ourselves. So let's start a new folder called 7. Okay, and the CSV file needs to have as its first line let's say we have a CSV file with 3 columns: the person's name and the age and height. Okay, so let's say I've got John, and his age is 34 and his height is 1.7 meters. Okay, And let's say I've got Alice, and she is 10 years old, and her height is 1 meter. And let's say Sally, right? Age, let's say 65, and height 1.6 meters. And BB, let's say age is 45, and height is, let's say, 1.8 meters. Okay, and you can go on, right? So the first non-blank line must really be, so let's sorry, the first line must be a name. It must be the headers for each column. So in this case, that's the first column is called name, second column is called age, and the third column is called height. So let's just save this as people. Okay, of course you can have many different lines, right? Okay, and we want to just leave this open, and let's try creating a test for this. Test.n, right? So we want to read the CSV file and want to do something with it. We want to, like, question it or find data inside of it. Okay, so the way we do that is to call Terra app, and my bad, Terra chat, and that's Smojo/chat/CSV. Then we just do the file name, which is what's called people. Right, and just call CSV. All right, and so what this does is to read this and save and actually produces a database. So if you do a dot here, for example, right now, and you run, you'll probably see the database out there, right, being produced. Okay, it's a very simple thing. It's just a hash where the row number followed by the data itself, row number 2 followed by data itself, and so on. Okay, so we want to save this instead. And let's say I want to into a database DB. So this simply means I'm going to save this into the name DB, right? Right. So I put DB dot. You can see it's going to produce the same thing. Okay, no change. Now I want now to, let's say, do some searching within this database. And how I do that is I need to make a function which allows me to search. Right. So let's say I want to look at demographics, right, which is like, or ages, let's say. And let's say I need to I put in a number, let's say, okay, it's going to take in a database and it's going to produce a sequence that I can use to display stuff. All right. Okay, so the first thing we have to know is that we can only search for stuff if the column headers, the columns, are labeled with the types. So in this case, name is a string or text. The age is an integer. So I put a /i here to mean that's an integer. And here it means the height is a real number. So it's R for real. Okay, I just save that. So the column names need to have the / type. Here we don't have any slash because it's just a string. It's fine. Okay. Now let's say if I can then put a quote here like that, and I'll say I want to have all the age above, let's say, 40. Okay, so that's a very simple thing. The age of the person in the database is 40 and bigger than, because that's a Smojo syntax, right? And I just call query. This is the other word that you need to use. There are just two main words, query and CSV. All right, CSV. Right, so now I can say the database 40 ages. Okay, this runs the query. It searches the database for everyone above the age of, sorry, above the age of database ages, right? Oh, maybe I say old people or elderly. Okay, anyway, aged. Okay, so this searches for people above 40 years old, right? And all I got to do then is I put a dot list to just, because it outputs a sequence, and I'm done. All right, now this is not a very useful sequence to output. There are only two things. if I want to display information within this sequence clearly, I can use the column headers that I've defined. I've got 3 column headers: the name, the age, and the height. And here I can just, because it's a sequence, I can just use a map for this, name map. And when I list it, it will just show me the names of the people whose ages are above 40. That's Sally and that's BB. So let's check. So John is 34, he won't be in the list. Alice is 10, she won't be in the list. Sorry, and Sally is 65, she will be in the result. That's correct. And BB is 45, so he is also in the result. That's correct. Okay. And I can do something like, let's say, height. So this means and, okay. And you can have as many as you like, these things. So, and let's say, and height is, let's say, 1.1, 1.8 and above. Okay. So this means search for people whose ages are 40 and above and whose height is 1.8 and above, right? And if you run this, right, it just says BB alone. Let's check and see if that's correct. So of course, there was BB and Sally. We know Sally is 1.6, so she doesn't qualify, whereas BB does. Now, if I change that to, let's say, something like this, strictly larger than, then of course I get no results at all, so it comes up with a blank, right? Now, if I want to display, let's say, some more complicated information out here, I can always create a function to display info, right? So let's say info of, this is my tuple that's coming in, right? Result. And I want to display something, right? So what I can do then is to say, okay, look, I just bind this to X and I say, I want to print out, let's say, the name dot, let's say, equals to dot then X height. Right. So what I'm going to do here is just to get a single item, like let's say a single result. I'm going to print out the name, and I'm equals to, let's say BB equals to 1.8 or whatever else it is, right? And I put a new line. Okay. Then here, instead of map, I just put a reduction. So I put info reduce, right? I don't have a dot list anymore. Just print this out. And you can, there's nothing there because there's no one satisfying this criteria. If I say instead, I mean, so comma means or. So either the age is 40 or the height is above 1.8. If I do that, then I get more information, right? I get Sally is 1.6 meters and BB is 1.8 meters, which I already know. Okay. Now you can make this quite complicated, and you can say, for example, let's say I want, let's add in more people here. Okay, we can make it more interesting. Let's say Cray, and he is 110 years old, and he is 1.2 meters. Let's say Zach is 55, and let's say he is 1.7 meters. Okay. And let's go here again and run the test. Okay, so this again searches for ages above 40 and height above 1.8 or height above 1.8. And you can see here we have quite a number of these. Okay. And what if we change this to and? All right, and you can have more if you want to, right? So let's say I have this, either age 40 or height above 1.8 meters, and let's say the name needs to start with an A, right? So name A prefix, right? So prefix is a standard word in Smojo to just find out if this is, you know, the prefix, that means it starts with. Okay, so the prefix basically just starts with. Okay, so this will just check for that. Let's try it out. There's no such person. How about a Z instead? Right. Yes, we've got one person, Zach, at 1.7 meters. Okay. So this is a very useful thing to do. And it's useful because you can then embed CSV data as a database inside your chatbots for various things. And you can even store this CSV data, like I said, into a database using Smojo/chat/dbase, right? This is one of the earlier master classes, and you can check that out as well. And what that means is that you can take these CSV data, store it into your database, and then you can actually use it to write code like this in your chatbot.